Hi guys, welcome to another Exploration Saturday, and today we're going to be talking about the Rocky Mountains and how the Lewis and Clark expedition were able to make it across. Now, if you've ever taken a vacation out west and if you happen to have driven through the Rocky Mountains, you know they are no joke. The Rocky Mountains are very large. There's a lot of different mountain ranges, very hilly, very steep roads. Now, even today, it can be very dangerous to travel through. You have all the snow, these steep roads, these curvy roads. Now, if we go back 200 years ago, before there were cars, how do you think you can cross the Rocky Mountains? By walking and using horses to carry your cargo. And this is what Lewis and Clark did. It was September 1805 when they finally reached kind of that mountainous area. They were in the Bitterroot range, so that's a part of the Rocky Mountains. And they were really hoping that there would be a river route that would go through the mountains so they could travel by boat across the Rocky Mountains and to the Pacific Ocean. But they soon found out this was not possible. There was little streams, little small tributaries of the river, but nothing good for traveling by boat. And what they thought would take just a few days to get across took about a month in total. And there's about 12 days where they're on the low pass that were very extreme. Horses were tripping down the steep incline of the mountains. They ran out of food. They were pretty hungry. They were so cold that their shoes had worn away, that they're wrapping rags around their feet, just trying to stay warm. And so it was a pretty rough crossing for them. Now, they did survive, but that is because they had a lot of help. They had the Shoshone Indians that helped them by providing horses, food, and directions. They also met the Salish tribe, also known as the Flathead tribe, that also gave them food, more directions, more horses, a place to rest, and the Nez Perce tribe too. So all of these tribes were helping them. They even had a guide from the Shoshone tribe. They called him Old Toby in the journals, but his name, as we think, was actually Swooping Eagle, and he helped guide them through the Rocky Mountain range. So they had a guide. They had lots of help from the local native people for food, directions, horses. They needed the horses to carry their cargo through those Rocky Mountains. Now, if you're wondering what they had for food, they didn't have much, and the native people at that time didn't have much either. We know from the journals the native people are actually heading to the east to the prairies to hunt for bison, the buffalo, so they could also gather meat for their own friends and family. But they didn't have a lot of food either, but they were sharing what they had with Lewis and Clark. So we know they had some dried salmon, some roots and berries. We also know that the captains had a little cornmeal left. They also had some portable soup, which does not taste good. Portable soup wasn't liquid. It was soup, all this basically soup that's been dried into a little gooey, pasty ball that you could basically melt with some snow to make into a thick soup. It doesn't sound good. It wasn't good. It was a last resort, this portable soup that had been dried into these little balls that they could take with them. We also know they also had some bear's oil for some cooking when they were able to hunt. We know they were able to hunt for some deer, some birds, ducks, and of course, when they were desperate, they did eat horse. Sorry guys. When you're desperate, they had to use what they had available. So it was a pretty rough crossing across the mountains. There was rain, there was sleet, there was snow. Their feet were torn, their feet were freezing, and it was just not a fun time. But eventually, after they crossed the Rocky Mountains, they were able to find a river, the Clearwater River, then the Snake River, and then onto the Columbia River, where they were able to take canoes all the way to the ocean. That was their goal, to get to the ocean, to find out if there was a water route all the way to the ocean from back home. And of course, the Rocky Mountains put it into that question. There was no water route that could easily be traveled to the Pacific Ocean. Now today I have a fun little craft that you can use from leftover Christmas supplies. It was Christmas not too long ago here, so I had some leftover things that we could use to make our 3D Rocky Mountains. And I've started it a little bit already, because if you want you can use paint, so that takes a little bit to dry. What you need is an old egg carton from the fridge. I have one here that I already cut up. You just cut off the lid, and those bottom part that holds the little eggs make perfect mountains. And you'll just cut them apart piece by piece here. And they make perfect little mountains. I used an old cardboard box to make my stage for my Rocky Mountains. So I had a lot of cardboard boxes left over from gifts. So I already painted it all brown to be that soil, those rocks. I have my Pacific Ocean right over here where they want to go. I have the Columbia River. And then I have all my Rocky Mountains and little streams too. And to make my rocks here, because if you've ever been through Rocky Mountains, it's pretty rocky. And so for little rocks I have scattered everywhere, I used some old tissue paper from some gift packaging. And I just took some markers and I took some grays, some blues to shade a little bit, colored all over that tissue paper. And then what you can do is, let me grab my glue here. You just tear a little piece off to be your rocks. You kind of crumple it a little bit because you know rocks, they're pretty sharp and jagged. And it doesn't have to be perfect because if you're in nature, nothing's perfect. Everything is different shapes and sizes and colors and textures, and that's what nature is. It's nothing's the same, nothing's perfect. And so you crumple up some tissue paper that you've colored, and you can place that on your Rocky Mountain board. That'll stick pretty well. Lewis and Clark talk about this really dense trail they followed that was covered in timber. There was trees fallen, branches everywhere, which made it pretty tough to cross over. So for some trees here, I would say grab some construction paper that's green, cut out little triangles here. And to add some texture to my tree, I'm going to grab a green marker, and I'm just going to color a squiggly line on top because you know trees have lots of leaves and branches. I'm going to grab a toothpick to be my trunk here. I'm going to tape that trunk on the back of that triangle there. And then really carefully, you might have mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle help you. In the cardboard stage, if you use a little nail to poke a hole through it really carefully, make sure your hand's not underneath the nail. You poke a hole through the cardboard, and that is where you can put your little tree through, and that'll stand up really well on your Rocky Mountain board. And of course, we can't forget our mountains, so we have those cutout eggshells. You can grab some white paint, which I have here in a cup. Grab a little paintbrush, and then we can just paint on some snow on top of our mountains because it's so cold up there that the snow never melts. And we'll just paint that a little around the top here. Now Lewis and Clark, to get through this mountain range was about 150 miles. And I kind of translated that into how many football fields they would have to walk across. 2,200 football fields to get through this mountain range. So you can just imagine if you want to walk 2,000 football fields in rain and snow without shoes, going really hungry, it could not have been fun at all. And so with your little mountains tops, we're going to add that little paint there. Now I want to make my mountains a little bit taller. I have some short little clips here already. And I thought if I use that egg carton lid, I can use it to kind of prop up my mountains. So I'm going to cut off the end here. And then I'm going to glue this kind of to be my backdrop. And I'm going to set it up right here in my trees. It's at the bottom of your carton. There's a little cardboard left. You're just going to grab some glue along that little cardboard rim there. There we go. And if you feel comfortable, you can use some hot glue to make it extra sturdy. But I'm going to set that on my stage, that little bottom of my mountains. I'm going to grab a little topper here, add a little bit more glue to the bottom here, and I'm going to add that right on top here to make it a little bit taller than the other little cliffs I already have. There we go. And if I wanted to, I can add a few more spaced out here along the outside. And so this is a really fun, quick, easy 3D Rocky Mountain diagram that you can make. If you have some extra Christmas supplies lying around, you can add that to your board. Paints, crayons, colors, construction paper. You can add maybe some grizzly bears. They didn't encounter any grizzly bears, but it can make your Rocky Mountains a little bit more exciting to travel through. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. If you want to post any pictures of your Rocky Mountain board, feel free to. If you have questions, just ask them in the comments below. I will upload the activity sheet right underneath this video. There's a lot more fun information on here too about what they experienced when they were crossing the Rocky Mountains. And there's even a few questions to consider. If you were a captain, would you want to take a trip through the Rocky Mountains? What would you bring? Who would you bring? What kind of skills you would need? And it's a lot of great questions to kind of think about that. Either today, what would you take? Or 200 years ago, what would you take with what you had available? Without cars or modern medicine, it could be a very dangerous trip. Well, guys, I hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend, and I will see you next time.